We begin the Gemara today on Daf Samach Ches Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top of the Yamud, where it says Tanu Rabbanan. The Gemara continues here with the details that we learned before about tzedakah. So before we were speaking about a person that takes tzedakah and he doesn't need the tzedakah. So the Gemara brings as follows: Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braisa Mesame Eseinai. Person that blinds his eye, meaning he turns a blind eye to a person that's poor and needs tzedakah. Va'amatzveh es bitnai. Or on the other hand, a person that fakes himself to be someone that needs tzedakah by showing that he has a swelled stomach that he didn't eat in days. Or a person that is walking around, he's limping, and he's faking that his feet are not healthy. So a person that is accepting tzedakah in this way and he doesn't really need it, he will not leave this world until it'll happen to him, that it'll come to this condition. Hamakabel tzedakah, a person that accepts tzedakah, ve'ein tzarech lekach, and he does not need this tzedakah, soifai ein niftem in ha'olam, the end will be, he will not leave this world until it'll happen to him what he faked that he needs. Connection to tzedakah, the Gemara now brings a Mishnah Masechta Peyah that talks about accepting or being able to take from the leket, shikha, and peyah. So the Mishnah there says as follows: Tanan hasam ein mechayven oisai limkoir as beisov as klita shmishe. So what that Mishnah is talking about is, in order for a person to be allowed to take peyah, if you own more than 200 zuz, 200 whatever the zuz is equivalent of today, so then you can't take any peyah. But if you have less than that, so then you can take peyah. But the question is, if he doesn't have the cash, but he has different things in his house, he has furniture, other valuables. So, we're not going to tell this person, listen, you don't have 200 zuz, but you have other valuables in that are worth more than that. So you can't go take pay. You have to sell your house, so you should have that money, or sell any of your furniture. So we don't obligate a person to sell his house or klita shmisha or his furniture to have this amount of money. We don't, but Vatanya in a Braisa we learned about this individual that wants to take payah and he does not have 200 zuz, but he has all kinds of valuables. So if he's using golden vessels, let him sell it and let him use things that are less valuable and he'll have more money. The kli kesef, he's using silver vessels, let him sell it and use only copper vessels. So we see here that we do obligate a person to sell the valuables that he has in order that he should have more money and he should not have to take from the payah or leket, shikha payah. Amar Rav Zvi, so Rav Zvi answers, it depends what it is. Like Kashi, it's not a contradiction. Ha, b'mita v'shulchan, if it comes to a bed or a table, so then we tell a person, if you don't have enough money, so you have to sell. If you have a more expensive bed, so sell it and buy something cheaper. Or a table as well, buy a cheaper table. And bekaisis v'kaitis. But when it comes to glasses or dishes that you have, so that's something that a person is not obligated to sell if he doesn't have enough money. But the Gemara doesn't accept this. Frek the Gemara, what's the difference? Ma'ishna kaisis v'kaitis deloi. Why, when it comes to the glasses or the dishes that a person uses, he eats from them, so we don't obligate him to sell these, the amar meisili, because a person could say that these are the kinds of dishes and glasses that I drink or eat from, and therefore anything that's on a lower level than this will be disgusting for me. It's not on my level. I can't use this to eat from it. If so, mita v'shulchan nami comes to a bed a person is accustomed to, or a table that he has. So Omar, a person can say, I can't live with a table or furniture that's not as beautiful as the ones that I own. So how can we force a person to sell these things in order to have money and not to be able to take payah? Answers the Gemara, Omar Rava berei the Rabbe. So Rava gives a different shot. When it says that we force a person to sell what he has, we're talking about something like b'machreisha de kaspa. Machreisha de kaspa is a person that has a scrubber. This is something a person uses in a bathhouse to scrub himself, and it's made from silver. So this is the kind of thing that if we tell a person to go and sell it and use a cheaper one, he's not going to be able to say that I can't use this, I'm disgusted by this. Something like this is what a person will be obligated to sell. But when it comes to dishes or furniture, table, chairs, those kinds of things, we're not going to obligate a person to sell in order to have more money. Rav Papa has another answer. Loi kashya, the Mishnah, the Braisa, the contradiction we had, whether we force a person to sell things that he has, is not a contradiction. Kan koidim sheyavil de giboy. The Mishnah is speaking about a person before he comes to collect the payah. Meaning the person comes into the field and he wants to have payah, and at that point he does not own 200 zuz, but he has all kinds of valuables. So at that point we allow him to collect the payah, and we do not force him to sell anything in order that he shouldn't be able to collect it. The Brais was speaking about a whole different case. The Brais is speaking about a person that had 200 zuz, and he went and took payah. He was not supposed to take the payah, and now the Bezdin comes to him and says to him, that payah that you had doesn't belong to you, because when you collected it, when you took this payah, you had 200 zuz. And at this point, Bezdin says, pay back. And he doesn't have any more money to pay back at this point. Now, when he has to pay back, Bezdin's going to say, but look, you have all these valuables. You're going to have to sell all these valuables in order to pay back the payah that you took that wasn't right, because at the time when you took the payah, you had 200 zuz in your pocket. That's Rashi's pshat in the Gemara over here. Tosfos has a slightly different pshat, Rabbeinu Tam, that kodim she'yavil de gibui refers to taka payah. When a person wants to take payah, we will not force a person to sell any valuables, that he should have enough money, that he should not need the payah. And when it says kan la'acha she'yavil de gibui, it refers to a person that wants to take from a fund of tzedakah. When it comes to a tzedakah fund, you can't take anything from a tzedakah fund. If you have so many valuables in your house, we're going to force a person to sell those valuables first before he goes and collects from a tzedakah fund for the needs that he has.
But payment is available for any poor person. Why can't they have?
There's a certain limit. Chachamim established who is considered poor and who is not. Because however poor one person is, there's others that are poorer than him. So therefore Chacham gave a certain standard of who's considered to be poor, that can collect the payah and who not.
Is there a hierarchy of payah? Like this guy goes first, this guy goes second?
If you have 200 zuz, you can't collect payah. If you don't, you could.
Okay.
Sagt der Heilige Mishneh, Yisoima, Sheisia, Ima, Oyachea, Midaita. Yisoima. So she has no father that can marry her off. She's a katana. Usually the father marries off a katana, but here her mother or her brothers marry her off with her consent. So if you remember, we learned about this many times in other places. This is what's called a katana gets married, and then it's not really a full marriage minatayra. At any given time, she could be a mimahanes. She could refuse this marriage. So they married her off, and then the kostvula, they wrote into her ksubah a dowry b'meya to give her 100 zuz, a b'chamishim zuz, or 50 zuz. So that's all they gave her. So it wasn't really the full amount that she deserved. Now when she becomes a gedayla and she realizes what she got and it's not the full amount that she deserved, so now she can, when she becomes a gedayla, she cannot take from them, from the mother or from the brothers, what was deserving for her, what she was supposed to get. Right? The amount she's supposed to get, we'll see, we learned it before already, I think as well, that she gets a tenth of the full estate of what the father owns, which could be much more than this amount. So when she becomes a gedayla, even though she's already married, it's after the fact, she can demand that they should give her the rest that she didn't get. Rabbi Yehuda says, if the father already married off a first daughter before he passed away, and now the second daughter has to get married after the father passed away, and we're trying to figure out how much is it that we have to give for this daughter that's getting married, we should give for this second daughter now the same amount that the father gave for the first daughter, because we see what the father gave before he passed away, so we know how much we have to provide for the second daughter now. Chachamim say you can't use that to decide how much you're going to give today, because sometimes it happens sha'adam ani. When he married off his first daughter, he was poor and he gave very little, and now he became rich. So maybe now he would want to give more. Or sure, maybe before he was rich and veheni, and now he's poor, so now he could only give less. So how could you evaluate and say that you're going to give for the daughter now based on what the father gave earlier? Ella, therefore, rather what we do is shaman is tanachasim. We have to evaluate how much money the father left over right now, and based on what he owns now, you give. And like I said before, it says that you give a tenth. But it has to be based according to the money that he owns now, and not evaluating what the father would be giving. So Shmuel says, addressing this subject over here, how do you evaluate how much you give for a yisaima, for the chasana? So how do you evaluate this? So Shmuel said, leparnasa, when it comes to parnasa, which refers to marrying off the yisaima, and you give her the money that she needs to go into the marriage, shamin ba'av. We evaluate by what we know the father would give. So Shmuel makes a statement and says we actually do go and evaluate by the father. The Gemara is soon going to bring from our Mishnah, whether you see like what Shmuel said or not. But first the Gemara asks from a Braisa, Meisvei, what does it say in the Braisa? Abanois, Nizainois, Misparnasois, Minichse Avien. The daughter, so they are Nizainois, they get fed, and Misparnasois. So what does Misparnasois mean? So usually Parnasa means that we provide for them what they need to get married from the estate of the father. Ketzad, what does this mean? We don't say ilu avia kayim. If the father was alive, this is the amount that the father, we know the attitude the father has, and this is the amount that the father would be interested in giving. We don't say that. Ela rather, shamanis anachasim. We evaluate how much money there's available here, and based on what there is in the properties and the money, we give her. So we don't evaluate the father's opinion, the father's attitude. So now, it said in the Braisa two things, Nizainis and Misparnasais. So my love, Parnosas Habal. When it says Misparnasais, that means the Parnasa she brings in for the marriage, brings in for the husband. And it says clearly over here that we evaluate by the properties that the father left, not by who the father is and what he would be ready to give, like Shmuel said. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak answers, when it says in this Braisa, Parnasa, loy beparnasas atzma, it refers to what she needs for herself. It's not referring to marriage. Fragt the Gemara, but the Braisa uses two different expressions. Hanizainis or misparnasis katani. The Braisa says nizainis and misparnasis. So what do these two expressions mean? So my love, don't you think? Achas parnasas abal. The expression of misparnasis refers to the parnasa she brings into the marriage. And vachas parnasas atzma. And the term nizainis means what she needs, the food to feed herself. Answers the Gemara, loy, not necessarily. Both expressions refer to her feeding herself. There's no question here. One expression it says is nizainis means the food, the drink that she needs, and the other expression of parnasa refers to the clothing that she needs. But it's not talking about the money that she needs for marriage. That's a different story. Now going back to what it said in our Mishnah. The Mishnah addresses this very point. So Tanan, the Mishnah said, the Chachamim say you can't evaluate what the father gave when he married off a previous daughter and say we're going to give the same amount now. Why? Because Palmim showed them ani v'hesher or asher v'hani. He was poor and became rich, or he was rich and became poor. So how can we compare to what he did before? Elo shaman anachasim v'noistin. We evaluate the money that is here now, and that's what we give her. So the Gemara addresses this. My ani or my asher. When the Mishnah here says that the father was first poor, now he became rich, what does the Mishnah mean to say? Does the Mishnah mean, like it sounds literally, that he was previously poor in the money that he has, and now he's rich, or the reverse? So we're talking pashut about the amount of money that he has now. How could he say that that's what the Chachamim are saying? So Miklal, but would that mean now that the Tanakam Rabbi Yehuda that was arguing with the Chachamim Sava, that Rabbi Yehuda says that we always evaluate what the father gave for a previous daughter, and that's a filo asher v'hani, even if we know that when he married off his previous daughter he was rich and now he's poor. Still, we're going to say we're going to give the daughter now like what the father gave before. But how could that be? Halesle. Right now, that money is not available. He became poor, he passed away, and now you can't give on that same standard. Why would Rabbi Yehuda argue with this simple point that the Chachamim say here, that you have to look at what the amount of money that there is now? Elo alav, says the Gemara, don't you think the pshat in the Mishnah is different? Ani bedas, ani means ani bedas. When it says in the Mishnah that perhaps the father was previously poor, and now it's rich, it doesn't mean regarding the actual money that he has, but it means regarding his outlook, his idea, the way he thinks about this. That sometimes you can't, what the Chacham is saying is, you can't establish what you're going to give today for the second daughter based on what he gave for a previous daughter. Because maybe before he was a ani bedas, before he had a poorer outlook and he was ready to only give less, and now he's a asher, means asher bedas. His opinion changed, and now he thinks broader, and he's ready to give more. So how are you comparing what he thought 10 years ago to what he thinks today? The Katani, and therefore, what does it say in the Mishnah? What do the Chachamim say? Shamanis hanachasim v'noistin law. You have to evaluate how much money there is, and based on what there is, that's what you give. So you see clearly over here, Alma loy azlinan basa umdane. We cannot evaluate the father's opinion. We can't look at what the father did when he was alive and based on that give for the daughter. We just have to evaluate the money the way it is now. So this is a question to Tiyuf to the Shmuel. This is the question of what Shmuel says, that we do evaluate the opinion of the father. Answer, means to evaluate. Answers the Gemara, Hu the Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So you're right, we're going to have to say that Shmuel holds the Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says we do evaluate the opinion of the father. And we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda said, if you married off a daughter before, you give for the second daughter now the same like the father gave for the previous daughter. So Rabbi Yehuda is clearly saying that we do evaluate the father's opinion. Like the Gemara, if Shmuel is paskening like Rabbi Yehuda, v'neime halacha Rabbi Yehuda. So why didn't he clearly say so? Why does he have to say as if it's his own idea that he's coming up with, that you evaluate the father's opinion? Let him just clearly say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Answers the Gemara, if you would say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, hava mineh, then I would think that this is only true, dafke hisiya. Only like Rabbi Yehuda said, if he once actually married off a daughter, the gali daite, so he revealed his intent of how much he would be ready to spend on this wedding. But if he never married off a daughter before loy, so maybe then I would say you can't go and evaluate the father's opinion of how much he would give. Kamash malan. So therefore, Shmuel is explaining the reason that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you look at what the father did before is not only because we just copy paste, you're copying what the father did before and you do the same now. We're actually trying to evaluate his opinion, his outlook. And therefore, it doesn't matter if the father actually married off a daughter before or he did not. And we give for the daughter now according to what we would evaluate the father's outlook is. And for Tani Hisiya, this that it says in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that the case was that the father already married off a daughter before, it's only coming to tell you how far the Rabbanan's opinion, which argues with the Rabbi Yehuda, goes. The Rabbanan say the afagav the hisiya for gali daite, that even if he did marry off a daughter and he already revealed his intent, he showed us how he would marry off one of his daughters. We still can't use that to evaluate his opinion for the next daughter because you never know. A person does something earlier one way, later differently, so there's no way of evaluating his opinion from before. Regarding this machlokes here, Rava said to Rav Chisda, Dashina mishmeich halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Should we darshan in your name? Should we say in your name that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that you evaluate the father's opinion? Amalei, so Rav Chisda said, Yehei Rava, should be the will of Hashem that kol kihanim milim al yaseh, that such great ideas tidershu mishma. Yes, you should say my name. So he agreed to Rabbi Yehuda that you do evaluate the father's opinion. Fragt the Gemara, but mi amar Rava hachi. Did Rava say this, that we should say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that we're going to evaluate the father's opinion? But Vatanya in a Braisa we learned, Rabbi said, how much do you give for a girl to get married? Basan is this daughter that's being fed by her brothers. Neteles isur nechasim. She takes a tenth of the estate that is available to get married. So we see that there's a set amount. We don't evaluate how much the father would give. V'amarav, and Rava said about this hilchas Rabbi. We paskin like Rabbi, not like Rabbi Yehuda that says you evaluate. Answers the Gemara loy kashya. This is not a question. Ha da midnei and ha da le midnei. When Rabbi says that we have to give a set amount, a tenth, it's a case where we don't know the father. He didn't live amongst us, and we can't evaluate how much he would give. So then there's a set amount. But if the father is here and we could have evaluated him and we know his lifestyle and we see how he lived, so then we give according to what the father would give. It's logical to make this distinction because Ravada Barava said about Rabbi himself that Maisa, there was an incident, and V'nasan la Rabbi gave for the Kala. She needed money, so how much did he give? V'nasan la Rabbi echad mishneim asa b'nechasim. He gave a 12th of the estate that the father left over. So Kashina Dodi. So here you have a contradiction. Rabbi says you give a 10th, and here Rabbi gave less. Answers the Gemara, Ela lav shmami. No, so the answer must be like we said. Ha da midnei, ha da lav midnei. In a case where you can't evaluate the father so that there's a set amount, you give a 10th. And that case, Rabbi gave a 12th because he evaluated that the father would have given less, so he gave less. Shmami, no, this proves the point. Going back to this point that Rabbi says, when we can't evaluate the father, said Omar Rabbi, that she takes a 10th of the estate for her marriage. So they said to Rabbi as follows: according to your opinion that there's a set amount, a person that has 10 daughters, passed away, and now Uben, he has one son. So are you going to say, Ein loy leben b'makom banis klum? If so, it would come out that the son gets nothing. because you have to give a tenth for each one of these girls that are getting married. So if that 10 daughters, so all of them together will take the entire estate of the father, and the son will not inherit anything. Amalahen, so Rebbe answered, no, that's not the way you give out a tenth for each one of these girls. This is what I say you do. Rishayna netalas isin nechasim. The first girl comes her time to get married, she's going to take a tenth of the properties of the estate. Then Shniya b'mesha shayra. The second one is not going to take a tenth of what was there originally, but she's only going to take a tenth of the remainder. And Shlish is also b'mesha shayra. The third one also takes only a tenth of the remainder. And so to the rest. And then what we do is all these different set amounts that we gave each one of these girls, we gather it all together, and then we divide it equally amongst these girls, and each one gets an equal amount from percent from the father's properties. But then you're going to have a lot of money left over for the son to still inherit. So therefore, you're not taking it all away from him. But the Gemara questions on this arrangement that you do over here. The Gemara says that you give a tenth for the first, and then, each one is getting less and less. But then afterwards, we do make it equal. We then take the full amount, and we put it together, and we distribute it equally for each one of the daughters. That's what the Gemara says here. So on this, the Gemara asks, why do we do this? Kol chada v'chada de nafsha shakla. Isn't each one of the girls taking what they deserve at the time when they get married? Meaning, why don't we evaluate what each girl should get at the time when she's getting married, what there is available? When the first girl is getting married, there's the full amount available, so she should get a tenth from that. When the second girl is getting married, 2 years later, let's say, so not as less available, so she should get a tenth from that. We should evaluate everybody accordingly when they get married. Why do we take everything and put it into one big pot and give everybody the same amount? Answers the Gemara, Hachi Ka'amar. This is what Rebbe meant to say. Im bo kulam linase ka'achas. If it happens that all these 10 daughters are coming to get married at the same time, so then chalkas b'shavet. Then we do what Rebbe said, that we give each one a tenth, but each one is only getting a tenth of the remainder, not that everyone gets the full tenth of the whole entire property, and then we divide it equally. But if each one is coming to get married in a different time, so then you're right, we're going to give each one according to what there's left at that time when they are getting married. So what Rebbe said here proves what Rav Masna said. Rav Masna said that in Baal, in Nasi Kulam Ka'achas, if they're all coming to get married at the same time, Naitlois Isser Echad. They all take just 1/10 of his property. So what does this mean? Isser Echad Salkedaitach. For all these 10 daughters that are getting married, you're only giving 1/10 for all of their marriages. Ella, rather what Rav Masna meant to say, like Rabbi said, Naitlois Isser Ke'echad. They all take a tenth like one, meaning that each one takes a tenth of the amount of properties that are left over, but then we put it back all into one pot and we distribute it equally amongst all of them. Tadarabanan and Abraisa we learned. This is over here, at up until what point are we going to actually give the money for the chasana of the sisayma to get married? So in Abraisa we learned as follows. Habanais, the daughters, bein bagru achalei nisru, whether she became a begeres, which is from the age of 12 and a half, before she got married, or bein nisu achalei bagru, or she got married even before she became a begeres, ibdu mizayniseyam. So from that point forward, they don't get fed anymore from the properties of the father. But v'lo yibdu parnasasan. However, the parnasa, the amount of money that they're supposed to get for the marriage, that they don't lose. So whether she's older, she's mature, she still gets the money for the marriage. And even if she already got married and she didn't get the full amount that she deserves, it's not too late. We're not going to say it's after the fact. She can go on demand to give her what she deserves even after the marriage. Divrei Rabbi. This is Rabbi's opinion. Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, no, af ibdu parnasasan. Once she's a begeres, just like she doesn't get fed anymore, she doesn't get paid the money that she needs for the marriage either. Or if she got married already, then she can't go on demand anything that they didn't give her. So Ketzad they noisai. So according to Rab Shimon ben Elazar, this girl wants to have money to get married, and she's going to be 12 and a half. She's not going to get money. Or if she gets married, let's talk about her becoming 12 and a half. So what does she do if she still wants to get the money? So they should pay someone off to marry them, so they could get married early, and then they'll be able to get the money that they need for the marriage. Interesting, but that means that she hires, she pays people to marry her, so she can get her money on time. Amar Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman said, Amar li Huna said to me, Hilchase keRebbi. We pass like Rebbe, that even after she becomes 12 and a half, or after she got married, she doesn't lose the amount of money that she deserves for the chastana. Rav Nachman. So Rav asks Rav Nachman on this, going back to what it said clearly in our Mishnah. It said, Yisayme sheisiya imoya achel midaita. A Yisayme, she's a katana. Her mother or brother is married her off with her consent. And they said that they're going to give her 100 or 50 zuz, which is not the fair amount that she deserved. So then when she becomes a gedayla, she can go and take out the more money that she really deserved from them. What was deserving to come for her. So what does it say in our Mishnah? Time, if you medaik in our Mishnah, so we have to understand as follows. The only reason why this is true, the ketana, because she got married as a ketana. And therefore, even after she gets married, she has the right to still demand what she deserves. Ha gedayla, but once she is a gedayla, even before she's a begettes, she got married as a gedayla, vitra. Once she got married as a gedayla, now she forgoes. She lets go of anything that she deserved, and she can't demand more. So what do you see over here? That this Mishnah, our Mishnah here, is paskening like Rav Shimon ben Elazar, that once she gets married as a gedayla, she can't go and demand more. Not like Rebbe. Rebbe said, even if she gets married as a gedayla, she can still come and demand what she deserves. Answers the Gemara, this is not a question, because Had Machoy, the case where we're saying that she could still demand more of what she deserves, that's what Rebbe said, that she does not lose what she deserves, and Rav Huna said that the halacha is like him. That's if she protested, she made clear, she said, I still want my amount of money that I deserve, so then she's going to get it. But our Mishnah, that's saying that once she got married as a gedayla, she can't demand what she deserves, is because she was quiet. She accepted it, she didn't say anything. So then once she got married, it's too late. Says the Gemara, this distinction, whether she spoke up or not, it's logical to say that this is true, the imkain, because otherwise, kashia the Rebbe ad Rebbe. There'll be a contradiction from what Rebbe said before to what Rebbe is saying now. What did we learn before? Rebbe is saying that even after she gets married, she doesn't lose the fair amount that she deserves. But in a Braisa we learned that Tanya, Rebbe said, Rebbe Yomer, Bas ani zaynis min ha'achin, while she's still being fed by her brothers, Neitalisis and Achasim, she also takes a tenth of the properties for her marriage. So what does it say over here? Nizaynis in, only while she's still being fed from the brothers she gets this. Shein and Nizaynis loy, but when she's not being fed from her brothers, she does not receive this. So this is a contradiction to what Rebbe said before. Rebbe before said that even after she's not being fed, because she's already a begettes, or she already got married, but still she doesn't give up the amount that she deserves for her chasana. Elalav, what's the answer? Like we said, it depends if she speaks up or not. Shma mina ha de machoy. If she protests, she speaks up, so then she still will get the money she deserves for the chasana. And ha de lay machoy. If she does not speak up, so then once she's a begettes and once she gets married, so then she loses the money for her chasana. Shma mina. This proves this point, this distinction. Says the Gemara, Omale Ravine l'Rave. Ravine said to Rave, Omalon Rav Ada bar Ave mishmach. Rav Ada bar Ave told us in your name that Bagra einet tzricha limchais, that if she becomes a begettes, so she does not have to speak up, she does not have to protest and make it clear that she still wants the money for her chasana. Nisis. If she already got married, she does not have to speak up clearly and say, hey, I did not get my fair amount, give me what I need. She does not have to speak up for this, she'll get it even afterwards. But Bagra Vinisis, if she both is already a begettes and she got married, then she's going to have to speak up in order for her to be able to get what she deserves. That's what Ravina said to Rava, people are saying in your name. So the Gemara now says this can't be true. Mi amar Rava hachi. Did Rava say this? But before in the Gemara, Rava is the one that was discussing this. Rava asked Rav Nachman Yisaima regarding the case of Yisaima. So Rava asked a contradiction. Once a Yisaima is married, does she still get the money she deserved for the chasana or not? And Vishani lay, and what did Rav Nachman answer him? Ha de machi, ha de loy machi. That it depends if she spoke up or if she did not speak up. So what do we see over here? That even when it comes to her just getting married, not when she got married and she's a begettes, both together. Even just getting married alone, So she'll have to speak up for herself if she still wants to get the money of her chasana. And now we're saying that what's Rav is saying? That if she gets married, she doesn't have to speak up for herself. She's automatically going to get what she deserves. Only if it's two together. If she got married and she's a begeres, then she's going to have to speak up for herself. So the Gemara now makes yet another distinction. So it says the Gemara leikashya. This is not a question. If the case is that even after she gets married, she's still being fed by her brothers. They don't have an obligation to feed her after she's married. But if the case is that she's being fed from her brothers even after she gets married, so then I say the fact that she didn't speak up does not mean that she gave up her parnasa that she deserves for the chasana. And the reason is her brothers are still feeding her. So she doesn't feel like the need to speak up, or maybe she's embarrassed to demand. She doesn't need to demand this money for her chasanas because she's still being taken care of. And the light comes on minaya. But if the case is that her brothers are not feeding her, so they dropped her, they let her go. So over here, she better speak up if she wants to get the money for her chasana. If she's not going to speak up, so then she's going to lose it. So the Gemara Omar Rav Huna said, Omar Rebbe said, Parnasa eina ketnai ksubah. This halacha that you have to provide for a Yusaima, the money that she needs for her chasana, this is not like any other conditions that we have in the ksubah. Right? For example, the other Tanai that we're speaking about is the fact that a girl gets fed from the father's estate. That's a condition in the ksubah. Now, the money she gets for the chasana is not the same like the condition in the ksubah. What does this mean? So the Gemara explains, what are we saying when we say that it's not like a condition in the ksubah? If you're going to say what this means to say is, when it comes to the money that she needs for her marriage, she can collect this for herself, even from Mishubadim, which means even those properties that her brothers, the Yusaimim, sold off to somebody else, she can go and collect from there. But the other conditions of the ksubah, for example, the mezainis that she gets, she could only collect from the properties that are available in the brothers' possessions, but not what they sold off to somebody else. Says the Gemara, what's the chiddush of this? This is obvious. This is something that we know, we do all the time. When it comes to the money for the chasana, we'll collect even from properties that were sold off, but not for the mezainis. And Rashi here actually brings, and it's interesting, the Gemara asks that it's pshita because of Maisim B'chol Yaim, but it's actually also B'feidish Mishnah and Masechta Gittin. We had it quoted actually before as well, that when it comes to Mezainis, you don't collect from Mishubadim, and when it comes to the Parnasa, you do. So that's a B'feidish Mishnah. What's the Chiddush to this? The Ela, so what was Rav Huna saying? The Chiddush over here is the Ilu Parnasa. When it comes to the money for the Chasana, Gav Yanami Mimetaltali, you could collect for this even from the valuables, the movable items that the father left. And Tanai Ksubeh, but when it comes to other conditions of the Ksubeh, when it comes to feeding her, we only collect from properties, from real estate, and not from movable items. Says the Gemara, but that's not true according to Rebbe. We had a discussion about this earlier in the Masechta, but Rebbe disagrees with this. Rebbe, according to Rebbe's opinion, idi ve'idi migbegabya. Either one, whether other conditions of the ksubah, whether the money for the chasana, it could all be collected even from a taltalin. The Tanya, as it says in the Braisa, echad nechasim sheyesh lam achrayis, v'echad nechasim she'ein lam achrayis, whether properties which are real estate, which even when it's sold off, you can still collect from it, or whether it's movable items that people don't rely on it because it can disappear, might see in lamazin ha'isha ulabanis. For you could also collect from there to feed the wife or to feed the daughters. Divrei Rabbi, this is Rabbi's opinion. So you see, according to Rabbi, when it comes to all conditions of the ksubah, including the mezainis, you collect from metaltlin as well. Ella the Gemara concludes, my parnasa eina ketnai ksubah. When Rav Huna was saying that Rabbi said when it comes to the chasana, the money for the chasana, it's not like any other condition of the ksubah. What it means is as follows: look at the Tanya, like it said in the Braisa. Ha'aymer, a person before he passes away, he says, Al yazunu b'naisav minachasav. My daughter should not be fed from my properties. Ein shaymelai. We don't follow what he says because that's a condition from the ksubah, and he can't say anything against the condition of the ksubah that he obligated himself to give. But if he says Al yisparnesu b'naisav, before he dies, he says, my daughter should not get any money for the chasana. So then, that we do listen to him. Shar parnasa eina ketnai ksubah, because the parnasa that we give for the daughters to get married is not an obligation. That's a condition in the ksubah, and therefore the father commands not to give them the money. Well, we'll not give them this money.